like next to call on somebody who Don was a fan of and who's been a long-term friend of the program, who carries the burden of being disgustingly smart. It's Rishad Tobaccowala. Rishad, I think 15 years ago, you said something like, everything that's analog will become digital and everything that becomes digital will become mobile. And it took me a while to let that sink in, but that's just an example of the sort of thinking he brings. So Rishad, you see the world, you have a global perspective. Could you share it with us? Who are you? Where are you? And what's your
Sure. Perfect. So thank you for inviting me, and hello, Heidi and everybody. I'm Rishad Tobaccowala. For many years, I worked at a company called Publicis. I'm still an advisor. I'm now a writer and a speaker and I guess an advisor. Generally, a starving author is what I tend to basically be these days. But with that being said, I'm going to basically, I first met Don 25 years ago when some combination of Tom Collinger, Rick Fisdale, and Jerry Reitman invited me to meet this gentleman who basically, as far as I could tell, was insane, okay? And he started saying stuff that made absolutely no sense. Like, for instance, that advertising was dead. And he was at that time at the United States, world's largest advertising agency, at least the United States. And I said, who is this guy? And Rick Fisdale and Tom Collinger basically said, listen to him carefully because what he is saying, we have to try to do. And so that was the first time I actually met him. And from that, I took away one lesson. So I've taken away 3 lessons from him. Many, but these are the 3 key ones. From that one was, how do you tell truth to power? And I have a chapter in my book called The Turd on the Table, which is when everybody is around the table and there's something brown and moist and everyone thinks it's a brownie. Someone's got to say, look, it's a piece of shit. And that was something that he was very good at doing. And he reminded me, even when we were doing the integrated marketing, and we did this whole thing, and we had charts and graphs, and he would occasionally tell me, you know, you're not doing it, but I don't think your company is with your, and he was right. It took us a long time. We lost a lot of opportunities, but he figured that out. So that was sort of like, you know, you have the right people on the boat. So that was one. The second, you know, learning, which is something that was also extremely important, was coming off that comment, which is how difficult change was. And many of his ideas are now being utilized by companies, ideas that he actually first shared, at least I was first exposed to them in 1995, have now become prevalent in 2020. I think a lot of companies would have been a lot better if they had scaled it up in 2010 or 2008. It's probably not correct for 1996 because his ideas actually needed a very digital omnichannel world. And what we now have is an omnichannel world in ways that people don't understand, which is just, it's not just analog and digital, and it's not just offline and online, but it's drive-through and pickup. It's real conferences and virtual conferences. And so this entire thing of it being totally mongrel-like, that we're moving from a pure breed world to a mongrel world, is what integrated marketing was all about. And for those who want a politically correct name, it's hybrid. So don't use mongrel, use hybrid. So, you know, so that's the second way of looking at it. But the single, and so I actually also have a chapter in my book called Change Sucks, you know, which is, but he also explained that while change sucks, irrelevance was even worse, and companies that did not participate. And finally, I think the single most important lesson, and I got to see him less over the years, but in the 25 years, anytime I saw him, here was the amazing thing. He was a student. He was perpetually a student. He was asking me questions. He was looking around. I was asking him questions. And he basically showed how important it is for all of us to upgrade our mental operating systems, to continuously to think, to continuously grow up. And I know, Heidi, that, you know, his ashes will be distributed in Australia. But if he had ever been buried, I think the very best line, besides being a potential dog owner or whatever, is what is on Arthur C. Clarke's tomb, which I just Googled to make sure I had it exactly right, which is Arthur C. Clarke, who was also a pioneer, who thought outside the box, 2001, and a whole bunch of other things. And this is what's on his tomb, and this is what I think is what I finally take away from Don, which is he never grew up, but he never stopped growing. Thanks.
Yes, yes, it's very appropriate. I'm writing that down.
He never grew up, but he never stopped growing.
Rishad, that's just great. Thank you so much. Didn't I tell you he was smart?